Now, I want your calls on this. Should the two-child limit on child benefits be scrapped? 0207 862 2222 is the number. Give us a ring. Cherie Blair has urged Labour's Keir Starmer to remove the two-child benefit cap on parents claiming child benefit if he wins the next general election. The current cap means families cannot claim tax benefits or universal credit for a third child. The barrister and wife of former Prime Minister Tony Blair says that scrapping the two-child limit would lift 1 million children out of relative poverty by helping families just be able to afford everyday necessities. But that will come at a cost to the taxpayer. So, Dawn, is it the right thing to do?
The problem with this story is no one's explained exactly how we're going to pay for it. We're all paying, as we know, we keep saying, the highest taxes that we've been paying in 70 years. And I think there are other priorities that we should be spending tax money on at the moment. As we were discussing earlier, we could potentially be spending more on defence with the situation in the world at the moment. So, A, how much is it going to cost? How are we going to afford it? B, it's not means tested, particularly, is it? So, I mean, it's like, why should I pay potentially? I don't have children, by the way, but why should my taxes go to paying for the child of a millionaire, you know, in child benefit? And you know what? If we want to encourage people to have more children, which I think we all agree we need, we're an ageing population. I want people to look after me when I'm, you know, a pensioner in a few weeks' time. But I just think. That's funny, JJ. But I do think what we need to do rather than this is concentrate improving childcare in this country so we can get, well, and it's mainly working mums, it's still mums that bear responsibility for childcare, to get more mums back into the system, to encourage families to have more children by making sure those children are well looked after. I think that is where I'd rather my taxes go.
Dawn has a point. I mean, it's not means tested. However, those earning over, I think it's 60,000 do have to start paying back their child benefit to a certain extent as they get more and more income. So you're not paying for millionaires to have child benefit necessarily. But maybe it should just go to those families, you know, the 25% of children that are living in poverty. Maybe they are the only children that should get child benefit rather than increasing it to 3, 4, 5 children.
I think it should be. I think you're absolutely right with that. I think the main factor is that we have this ageing population, and there is no way of fixing it unless we encourage people to have more babies. And unfortunately, more families today are living in poverty, according to the government's own measurements, are living in poverty than at any other time in our history. So, if we can help them, yes, childcare is very important. But unfortunately, parents can be working and you can have your kid in nursery or your 3 kids in nursery and you're still not going to be making enough money ends meet. Most people who are claiming child benefit will also be working. It's not just a case of, I haven't got a job, so I'm claiming child benefit. Most people are actually in work and still having to claim it because they're earning so little. So it makes no sense for me for them to say...
If we had an affordable and potentially free childcare system like they have in some Scandinavian
countries... How do you fund that?
Well, that's what I mean. If you've got more people out there working, contributing to the economy, I'd rather that the more benefits being handed out.
Why not both?
Well, because we can't afford both. We can't afford one option. We can't afford both, JJ. How much more tax do you want to pay?
But if we're thinking about child benefits, £25, I think, for your first child. I think it decreases for the second to about £16 a week. And we're thinking about scrapping that and just giving childcare, well, that'll afford you about 1 hour of childcare a week. That's not going to get somebody back into
At the moment, that's why we need to sort that system out. We want to encourage people to have more children. I personally want to encourage more women who are stuck at home with kids because, as you say, they can't afford the childcare. And we've got a huge, very talented, very wanting to work hard population of females out there who are stuck at home because we don't have a decent childcare system in this country. Go to the Scandinavian countries. It works perfectly there.
Well, women they pay higher rates of tax, though.
Of course they do.
You want to pay 55% of tax?
Well, it depends. It depends exactly whether we get the working population back. We get we stop paying benefits out in other areas if we get more people out of work in decent paid job, and childcare is much more affordable.
Talking about other countries, I think it's only 3 other European countries that have a cap like this.
Yeah.
On child benefit.
Romania, Cyprus, and somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah. So Spain. So we are kind of. We're not on our own, but we're kind of out in the minority here with having a cap. So does that make us seem unfriendly towards families, Dawn?
I think there's lots of things in this country that make us unfriendly towards families, and we as I keep saying, we do want to encourage people to have more babies because we want them to look after an ageing population. So of course, but I mean, other countries, there are so many variables when you're comparing countries as to how their tax systems work, how their childcare is set up, how jobs are paid, so many variables. So just to compare us on the child benefit thing, I think is profoundly wrong. You need to take all the other variables into consideration.
Well, the criticism as well of child benefit is, Dawn sort of touched on it at the beginning, if you're sitting there and you don't have children, you're paying taxes for the child's education system already, you're paying taxes for lots of different subsidies for children. Why?
Because that's
it
the way.
Seems very unfair. Why should that burden be put on other people?
That's the way our tax system works. I'm pretty healthy. I don't smoke. I drink a bit of alcohol. I work out a lot. Why am I paying taxes towards hospital bills when I've not been in hospital myself for 5 years? Because I bothered to look after myself. I'm not going to hospital. So you're going to pay for stuff that you don't use. That's the way it works in this country. And ultimately, if you don't have kids, fine. But as Dawn says, she hasn't got kids. She's still going to need someone younger when she's older to look after her. That's because we're having children. My kids may end up working as a nurse or a doctor, and they'll be looking after all of us when we're old people. That's it. Eventually, you're getting your money back from that, whether you have children or not.
I also think £25, thinking about how expensive children are, it's not very much. Do you think it's really going to, if we take the cap off, it's going to cost the government a huge amount of money? Do you think it's going to encourage people to have more children? And do we want people to have more children that are struggling to be able to afford the children that they have already? If they're relying on child benefit, why on earth are we encouraging them to have more children?
You're correct. And this is George Osborne's argument previously, was that if you can't afford to have children, you shouldn't have them. But sometimes accidents happen. You can't.
And circumstances change as well. Divorces happen and things like that. So, of course, circumstances change. So we do have to take that into consideration.
Yeah, and although £25 seems like a small amount, that may be the difference between your family eating that week and not. £25, you can go and buy a big bag of rice, several bags of pasta for 25 quid. That could be the difference between your family eating and not eating. So,
I mean, as I said, it's 25
for the first
first kid, and then I think £16 for the second.
Something like that.
Is that right? And then presumably, if they were to lift the cap and there would be a third, it would be slightly less than that. We've got some messages coming in. Do call. Let us know how you feel about this 2-child cap. Maybe you've got 3 children and it would really help you. 0207 862 2222 is the number. Michael on Twitter, well, X, says, keep the 2-child cap, raising the tax threshold and scrapping green taxes would have more of an effect. OK. I don't know whether that would have much of an effect on families, although I suppose if we scrapped green taxes and changed the tax system to benefit people on lower income, it may just help families be able to afford the necessities.
Well, if you go down, I mean, there's green taxes, which people also mention foreign aid, why we're giving foreign aid to places like India, etc., etc. So the whole tax system could be looked at where we're spending our taxes and are we spending it wisely?
Val on Facebook says, good on Cherie Blair, this is the next generation we're talking about. What a great way to invest in them and lifting them out of poverty. Oh, and that is the difficult thing, isn't it? They always say that money spent on children is never badly spent because you're investing in the future, and the more money we spend on, for example, making sure children are well nourished and well cared for means that they will have better health in the future, could be less reliant on the NHS.
Which, absolutely, that all makes perfect sense as well. But we don't have a magic money tree, despite what we were told not so long ago. There isn't a magic money tree.
But this is perhaps a way of making the money go further in the future.
Handing more of it out?
By handing more of it to a younger generation in order to save later.
Well, maybe, as I said, if we improve the childcare system, then that generation could get out to work, contribute more to the economy, and children would have better childcare and probably, potentially, be better workers themselves when they grow up.
Don't think there's a parent out there that will be disagreeing on the fact that they'd like better and cheaper childcare. Cheryl from Middlesbrough, what's your thoughts on this? Do we need to lift the cap, the 2-child cap?
Hiya there, sorry. No, to be honest, I actually agree with Dawn. I believe that we shouldn't scrap the cap. I mean, I'm a mother myself of 2 children. I work full time, but I feel like if the cap was lifted, it leaves it open to a little bit of abuse, if you like. You know, people, you know, there's them types of parents, like, obviously not saying everybody's the same, but, you know, would go on to maybe constantly have children, and just where's the incentive to potentially, you know, want to be able to put your children into childcare and actually work?
Cheryl, I mean, listen, I absolutely hear what you're saying there, and if you're a full-time mum and you've got 2 children, and you're putting them into childcare, that is exactly where your major concern is. But that's very expensive in comparison to lifting the cap. And what you're talking about there, Cheryl, is thinking that there is people out there, men and women, that are thinking, right, if we have another child, we'll get an extra tenner a week. That's 40 quid a month. Brilliant. That's good maths.
Yes, no, but they'll also be able to then be open to have access to other additional benefits from the children. But in my opinion, I feel like they should have access to vouchers, you know, fruit and veg, food, you know, exactly like Jonathan, childcare vouchers. That's how it should be. It should be stuff that could be utilised through, like, you know, making sure the child is fed, is, you know, having an education, not giving money to, I mean, a lot of the parents that do sometimes claim that they're struggling, but, you know, you'll find they're covered in tattoos, or, you know, they've got like cigarettes in the pockets.
Okay, but Cheryl, when we're talking about
like that.
No, I totally understand, and you're not alone in your view here, Cheryl. I get calls all the time like this, but we're talking about 25% of children are living in relative poverty. 25%. That's not a small number. So they're not all there because their parents are getting tattoos and cigarettes.
Oh, no, of course.
So don't those parents deserve to be able to make an assessment on what their child needs, in which case they deserve the chance to have the money to make that decision?
Their child needs food and clothing first and foremost. And in my opinion, £10 a week doesn't actually really get you much bread and milk this day and age. So why can't we give them vouchers that cover the cost of the essentials? We can cover them cost of a good food shop to feed their children. Why not vouchers for clothing that they will be able to go to a shop and confidently have clothes instead of going to a food bank that they can have the sizing right for them? That's what I feel it should be.
I am always a fan of a new idea, and that's certainly one. Thank you very much for your call. Sharon from Staffordshire. I don't think it's a new idea, actually. I think they used to do food stamps. What's your view on the cap on child benefit?
Okay. Good morning, Storm and panel.
Good morning.
Storm, my argument is that I think it's wrong. It shouldn't be scrapped at all, because this is where people abuse it. Somebody came into my place of business with 12 children, never worked, never contributed. There's people out there that I know work, can only afford to have 2 children.
Yeah.
They won't have any more. It's completely wrong. These people do abuse the system with their children, I'm sorry to say.
But do you not think they're quite a small percentage of the population, or do you think it's quite a large?
No, Storm, I don't care. I don't care, Storm. No, you decide to have your children, you look after them.
Interesting. And again, not alone in your view there, Sharon. Lots of people feel the same way. Thank you very much for your call. An interesting one there, actually, and lots of different ideas coming to the forefront. The food stamps idea might give the taxpayer a little bit more certainty that the money's going to the place that they want it, but whether that's appropriate, I don't know.